movement. So we've covered breathing in a more structured, protected way. And now let's talk about breathing and movement because inherently that's going to be what's the most important, right? How do we move and breathe and not risk slide backwards or further issues to some of those complications, things around pregnancy and postpartum bodies, right? So if we've mastered our breathing, we feel strong in our breathing, we can now incorporate movement and those breathwork mechanics. So a great place to start is on the ground, right? So if Annie's quadruped position, right, just in that one, just establish that reflexive breathing, right? She can breathe in, right, get that expansion, diaphragm moves down, pelvic floor moves down, exhales, right, everything's coming up. Once you've gotten a couple breaths in, add a rock to this. So that hand knee rocking, right? So whether you're exhaling back or exhaling forward, can you still feel that reflexive breathing pattern, right, as you rock forward, as you rock back? And again, earning our progression here, right? So if she feels good rocking, can she come up from a hand knee position to a hand foot position, right? So now there's a little bit more load on the body. Find that breath reflexively there, keeping that midline nice and stable, making it easier for that reflexive breathing pattern. If she feels good there, maybe she adds a rock, right? Hand, foot rock, and then maybe eventually a crawl, right? And it could just be simple, couple steps forward, couple steps back, but really making sure you're not holding your breath, right? Keeping this alignment as best you can to really make it easy for the diaphragm and the pelvic floor to move reflexively, and then not holding the breath and not putting outward pressure, right? Bringing everything in. So if you need to prep, right? So if she were to come back, pause, reset that breath, right? Pre-engage that transverse abdominis and that pelvic floor, getting it to come up a little bit with a slight exhale, and then put herself under more load, and then find that tension, hold that tension while moving forward and backwards, right? Good. Thank you, Annie. And from here, right, we've added some crawl, we've added some load. Now, can I find that breath to stand up? So just doing something as simple as a prone get up, but we'll start from the hands and the knees, right? So again, taking that big inhale, maybe pre-exhaling, creating some tension, and then standing up and again, exhaling and contracting as you stand up, right? So as you're going through this load management progression, we'll say, where you're exerting more effort, right? Making sure you're exhaling it, everything's coming up with you, right? And again, just like MovNat teaches from the ground up, we start there. Again, earning that progression, right? And if we can do this, then we could start lifting heavier things like a toddler, right? So you have your rambunctious little kid that needs to be picked up because for the 100th time that day, right? Something we want to think about is like, do we just let go of all that core musculature and we just pick it up because we got to get out, right? We've all been there. Just need to get out. Kid scream, whatever. Or do we find that breath, pre-engage that core and floor so that when we come up, we're strengthening that optimal breathing pattern. And Annie's done a lot of work for herself after having two kids of really hammering home that reflexive breathing, right? So whether it's lapping to a chest carry, right? And shoulder carries, all those things, right? Can we find and stabilize that core, right, while moving? So let's just start with the three simple deadlifts, right? So working through that breathing pattern, right? Exhaling, preloading some of that tension, getting that pelvic floor and core to engage, and then moving the weight, right? Something if you're having trouble with breath management is maybe at the top you take a pause, right? Take another inhale, exhale, and then lower, right? So as, again, you're trying to work reflexively with your breathing pattern and make sure we're not putting outward pressure with that exhale and bringing everything in as we exhale and expanding as we inhale. And whether this is deadlifting, go ahead, lap it up to a chest carry, right? Or squatting, right? Sometimes you'll notice a little bit different pressure sensation in a squat versus a deadlift, especially at the bottom, right? So are you cueing that pelvic floor and that core to, again, work together optimally, right? And so you may not be able to go as deep, right? That might be too much tension on the pelvic floor and it just wants to let go because it's not strong enough and supportive enough to be there at the bottom of the squat. So you really pay attention to those sensations and let your breath be your guide. Where are you noticing? Are you noticing that outward pressure, that inward pressure? And just follow those sensations and really work towards it. Right. Now, something that we get caught up a lot in is that cylinder, right? That perfect optimal alignment between the shoulders, the pelvis, etc. But what if you had a misalignment, right? What if you're carrying kid or you're awkwardly sway back, right? Life's going to happen. And can we still find that breathing pattern that is optimal, right? We're not pushing out, we're bringing up and in, right? Regardless of how we're carrying the load. And again, experiment and find your edge and train as close to that edge without going over you can. And I would suggest, especially varying your carry. Carrying is something you can do a lot of, and it has minimal impact on stress of that core and floor, right? So you're holding that sandbag, you're holding a kid, whatever it may be, and you're just breathing. Enjoy those exercises and earn your progression.